Welcome to Nachtmeier Witness. Some nights feel wrong before anything happens. The air feels heavy, the room feels colder, and somewhere in the dark, you get the strange feeling that you are being watched. Tonight, you will hear stories from people who became witnesses to things they never expected to see. Some saw someone standing in the shadows. Some heard voices with no one nearby. Others found themselves in places that did not feel real at all. Before we begin, leave a comment and tell me where you are listening from tonight. And if you enjoy true scary stories with a slow, dark atmosphere, subscribe to Nachtmeier Witness. Get comfortable. The night has already begun. My wife was away at her parents' house for the weekend, so I had the place to myself. It was supposed to be one of those quiet, easy nights where nothing really happens. I was not doing anything strange or spooky. I was not walking through a dark basement, sitting in an old abandoned house, or trying to scare myself with ghost stories. I was just at home, gaming online with a friend, wearing my headset, talking through the mic, and enjoying the fact that I had a calm weekend alone. The house was quiet, in that way a home gets when you are the only one there. It is not always an uncomfortable quiet, but it is different. When another person usually lives there with you, their absence has a sound of its own. You notice the missing footsteps, the missing movement, the missing little noises from another room. Even if you are focused on something else, some part of your brain still knows the house is emptier than usual. I knew my wife was not home. There was no confusion about that. She was at her parents' place for the whole weekend, and I had been alone in the house for hours. It was not like she had just stepped out for a few minutes and might come back at any time. She was gone. I had settled into that fact. I had probably locked the doors, gotten comfortable, and let myself relax into the night. My friend and I were playing online together, and because I had my headset on, my attention was mostly on the game and our conversation. We were probably joking, calling things out, focusing on what was happening on the screen, and doing what people do when they are deep into a game. Even with the headset on, I could still hear enough of the house around me. That is important. It was not like I was completely cut off from the world. Anyone who games with a headset knows that sometimes you can still hear a door, a knock, a voice, or a sound from another room if it is clear enough. I was sitting there, playing, when I heard my wife's voice call me from the other room. It was clear enough that I recognized it immediately. That is what made it so strange. It was not just a random sound that my brain turned into a voice. It was not a pipe creaking, the TV in another room, or a neighbor making noise outside. It sounded like my wife. Not only a woman's voice, but my wife's voice. The tone, the way she called for me, the familiar sound of someone I know so well that I do not have to think before recognizing her. When you live with someone, their voice becomes part of your daily life. You know how they say your name. You know the rhythm of their speech. You know the tiny details in the way they call to you from another room. This sounded like that. For a split second, the old habit in me almost answered. That is the strange thing about hearing a familiar voice. Your body reacts before your mind checks the facts. If your wife calls you from the next room, you respond. That is normal. That is automatic. But before I could answer, I clued in. I remembered instantly that she was not home. She was away for the weekend. She could not be in the other room. There was no reason for her voice to be coming from anywhere inside the house, so I did not respond. I just sat there for a second, still holding on to the controller or mouse, still wearing the headset, and told myself I had imagined it. That was the easiest answer, and honestly, the one I wanted to believe. I figured maybe my brain had filled in a sound because I was used to her being there. Maybe I had been gaming too long. Maybe I was tired. Maybe a noise from the game or from my friend's mic had mixed with some sound in the house and turned into her voice in my mind. The brain is weird, and sometimes when you are alone in a place you normally share with someone, you can almost hear them in the background because you expect them to be there. I was willing to accept that. I wanted to accept that. The thing is, I knew I had heard it clearly, but I also knew it made no sense. So I kept quiet and tried to move on. I did not want to make a big deal out of it. I did not want to say, I think I just heard my wife call me, because then it would become real in the conversation. It would turn from a strange little private moment into something I had to explain. If I ignored it, I could tell myself it had been nothing. If I said it out loud, then I would have to admit it had scared me. And for a moment, I thought I had gotten away with ignoring it. Then my friend spoke over the mic. He said, I thought your wife wasn't home this weekend. That sentence completely changed everything. The second he said that, the little explanation I had built for myself fell apart. I could no longer tell myself it was only in my head. I could no longer blame imagination or a memory of her voice. My friend had heard it too. He was not in the house. He was hearing me through the mic from wherever he was. He had heard the voice clearly enough to recognize that it sounded like my wife, or at least like a woman calling me from my side of the mic. He had also remembered that my wife was supposed to be gone, which means the sound was clear enough and real enough for him to question it. That was the part that made my stomach drop. If I had been alone, I probably would have dismissed the whole thing after a while. I would have told myself I was tired, that the house was quiet, that I was used to my wife being around, and that my mind had played a trick on me. People hear things sometimes. It happens. But my friend confirming it took away that safe explanation. He had no reason to imagine my wife's voice. He was focused on the game too. He was not sitting in my quiet house, surrounded by my expectations and memories. He was on the other end of the mic, and even he heard it. There is something deeply unsettling about a voice from an empty room, especially when it belongs to someone who is alive, but not there. It is different from hearing a random whisper or an unknown voice. A stranger's voice would have been scary, but my wife's voice made it personal. It felt like the house was using something familiar, something comforting, something I should naturally trust. That is what bothered me most. The voice did not sound like an intruder. It did not sound like a threat. It sounded like my wife calling me the way she normally might. But she was not home. That familiar quality made it worse than if I had heard a strange noise. If I had heard a crash in another room, I could check it. If I had heard footsteps, I could wonder about the floor or the neighbors. If I had heard a random voice, I could think maybe the sound came from outside. But hearing my wife call from inside the house while she was miles away gave the moment a strange, wrong feeling. It felt like something had copied her. I remember that instant after my friend said it. It was like the house became much quieter than it had been before. The game was still going, my headset was still on, my friend was still there, but my attention shifted away from the screen and into the rooms around me. I became aware of the doorway, the hallway, the room where the voice had seemed to come from, all the spaces I could not see from where I was sitting. A second earlier, I had been alone in a normal house. Now, I was alone in a house where something had called me in my wife's voice, and someone else had heard it. I did not want to answer the voice. I am glad I did not. Maybe that sounds superstitious, but there is something about not responding that feels important. If a voice calls from another room and you know the person is not there, answering feels like giving it permission to continue. I do not know if that is true, but in the moment, I was glad I had stayed quiet. My first instinct had been to ignore it, because I knew it could not be real. After my friend confirmed it, that instinct felt even more right. Whatever had called me, I did not want to have a conversation with it. I also did not want to go looking for it, at least not right away. That is the part people always imagine differently when they hear stories like this. They think they would immediately stand up, walk through the house, check every room, and prove there was nothing there. Maybe some people would. But when you hear the voice of someone who is not home coming from another room, the idea of walking toward it feels deeply wrong. Your mind starts asking questions you do not want answered. What if someone is actually in the house? What if you turn the corner and see no one? What if you turn the corner and see something wearing a face or voice that does not belong to it? What if the voice calls again, closer this time? The scariest part was the fact that the voice came from inside the house. If my friend heard it through my mic, then it had to be near enough or loud enough to be picked up. That means it was not only some faint thought in my head, it was an actual sound in my environment, at least enough for the microphone to catch it. That detail makes it hard to explain. A headset mic can pick up background noise, but it does not usually invent voices. It caught something. My friend heard something, and what he heard matched what I heard. I tried to think of normal explanations. Maybe the game audio glitched, and a voice line sounded like my wife. But my friend's question made that less likely, because if it came from the game, he would have heard it from his own game too, not through my side. Maybe someone outside called someone's name, and the sound came through a window. But it sounded like it came from inside, from the other room, and it sounded like my wife. Maybe the neighbors were loud, and a woman's voice carried through the walls. But again, my friend heard it clearly enough over my mic to think it was happening in my house, and I knew the voice. It sounded like her. Maybe my phone or some device played an old message or audio clip, but I do not remember anything like that being on. I was gaming. The house was otherwise quiet. There was no obvious source. And if it had been a device, why would it call me from the other room in my wife's voice? Why at that moment? Why clearly enough for both me and my friend to react? The more I tried to explain it, the more uncomfortable it felt. What really sticks with me is that I did not say anything first. My friend brought it up. That means I did not influence him. I did not say, "Did you hear that?" and make him listen for something after the fact. I did not tell him I thought I heard my wife. I stayed quiet and was planning to dismiss it. Then he asked why it sounded like my wife was home when she was supposed to be away. That independent confirmation is what makes the memory so strong. He heard it without me prompting him. He noticed the same contradiction I noticed. That is one of the worst things about shared strange experiences. On one hand, it validates you. You know you are not crazy. You know you did not imagine it alone. On the other hand, it removes the easiest comfort. If only you heard it, you can doubt yourself and eventually move on. When someone else hears it too, especially someone who is not even physically there with you, the event becomes harder to bury. It becomes real in a way you may not want. After that, I could not focus on the game the same way. How could I? I was still technically doing the same thing, sitting there gaming with my friend, but the house around me had changed. Every quiet room felt like it might be occupied. Every pause in conversation felt too long. I started listening for another call. Part of me wanted to hear it again so I could understand it better, but most of me absolutely did not. One time was enough. I did not want it to repeat. I did not want it to get closer. I did not want it to sound more like her. There is something awful about hearing a loved one's voice when they are not there. It makes you feel pulled in two directions. The emotional part of you wants to respond because the voice is familiar and connected to someone you love. The logical part of you says, no, that is impossible, do not answer. That conflict creates a very specific kind of fear. It feels like bait. I do not know if that is what it was, but that is how it felt after the fact. Like the voice used the one sound in the house that would almost guarantee my attention. I have heard stories from other people about something mimicking voices in their homes. They hear their mother call from another room, but their mother is not home. They hear their child laugh, but the child is asleep. They hear a spouse say their name from the hallway, but the spouse is at work. Those stories always bothered me, but after this, I understood why they bother people so much. A mimic does not have to attack you to be terrifying. It only has to sound like someone you trust. The fact that it happened while my wife was away made it even more unsettling. If she had been home, I would have answered without thinking. I would have called back. What? We're gone to see what she needed. The only reason I did not answer was because I knew she was gone. That means if something was trying to get a response, it failed only because the timing made me question it. If this had happened on a normal night when she was actually home, I might never have known anything was wrong. I might have responded to a voice that sounded like hers, then found her asleep or in another room, and only later realized the voice had come from somewhere else. That thought bothers me too. It makes me wonder how many times people answer things they should not answer, simply because the voice sounds familiar enough. How many times does someone hear their name called and respond automatically, without thinking? We are trained by life to respond to voices we know. That is what makes mimic experiences so unsettling. They use instinct. They use routine. They use love and familiarity as the hook. I do not know what was in the other room. I did not see anything. I did not hear footsteps. I did not hear the voice again, at least not in that moment. There was no dramatic reveal, no shadow moving down the hall, no door slamming shut. It was just one call in my wife's voice and my friend's question over the mic. But that was enough. Sometimes the smallest event is the one that scares you most, because it does not give you enough to solve it. It gives you only the impossible part, then leaves you with the silence afterward. I also think about my friend's side of it. He must have been confused too. From his point of view, he was gaming with me online, knowing my wife was gone for the weekend, and then he heard what sounded like her voice from my house. He did not know what was happening in the rooms around me. He was not there to check. All he could do was ask the obvious question. I thought your wife wasn't home this weekend. That one sentence carried the whole horror of the moment. It was confirmation and fear at the same time. I probably tried to answer casually, or maybe I admitted it was weird. I do not remember the exact conversation after that as clearly as the moment itself. What I remember is the feeling of being caught. I had planned to ignore the voice and pretend it was imagination, but my friend took that option away. He heard it too. There was no pretending after that. The house had made a sound, and it had sounded like my wife. After something like that, being alone feels different. You become aware of how far away everyone else is. My wife was at her parents' house. My friend was only present through a headset. If something happened in the house, I was physically alone. That fact settled in harder after the voice. Before, being alone had felt relaxing. Afterward, it felt exposed. The rooms around me seemed larger. The silence felt more deliberate. The distance between me and the other parts of the house felt too open. I do not know if I checked the other room eventually. I may have, because logic pushes you to verify things, but even if I did, I already knew what I would find. Nothing. That is how these things usually go. You hear something impossible, Then check the room, and the room is empty. That empty room does not make you feel better. It just proves the voice had no normal source. It leaves you standing there with a worse question. If no one was there, then what called me? The whole experience was brief, but it has stayed with me because it was so personal. It used my wife's voice. It happened while she was away. It was heard by someone else, and it came from inside my house while I was alone. Those details make it hard to dismiss as a random sound. A random sound does not know what your wife sounds like. A random sound does not make your friend ask why she is home when she is not. A random sound does not make you freeze, because the normal response would be to answer, but every logical part of you knows you should not. Maybe there is a normal explanation somewhere. Maybe a neighbor's voice carried through the walls in a strange way and happened to sound like my wife. Maybe the microphone picked up some audio from the game or from my friend's side, and our brains matched it to her voice. Maybe my exhaustion or focus on the game made me mishear something, and my friend misheard it too. I can say those things because I know people like explanations, but none of them really satisfy me. The voice came from the other room. It sounded like my wife. I knew she was gone. My friend heard it too. That is the story. It does not need much more than that. A voice called me from an empty part of the house in the exact voice of the person who should have been there, but was not. I ignored it because I realized immediately that my wife was away for the weekend. I told myself I was imagining things. Then, before I could fully push it out of my mind, my friend heard it through the mic and asked why my wife was home. That was the moment I knew it had not just been in my head. I still do not know what called me. I am just glad I did not answer. I was sleeping in the guest bedroom in the attic at my parents' house with my husband when one of the scariest things I have ever experienced happened. The house is old, and it has always had a strange energy to it. I do not mean that in a dramatic way, like every corner is terrifying all the time. But it is one of those houses that never feels completely quiet, even when nobody is moving around. It has the kind of stillness that seems to carry old sounds inside it. I grew up there, so I had been around that feeling for most of my life. I was used to odd noises, footsteps when no one was there, and the sound of people talking from rooms that should have been empty. After a while, you almost learn to live with that kind of thing. It becomes part of the house, like creaky floors or old pipes. You hear something strange, you pause, maybe you listen for a second, and then you tell yourself it is just the house being the house. The attic had its own feeling too. It was not just another upstairs room. It was the attic, and that alone gave it a different weight. Old houses already have a way of holding on to the past, but attics seem to hold on to it more than any other part of a home. They sit above everything, packed with old air, old wood, old corners, and old memories. In my parents' house, the attic felt especially heavy because my uncle had died in the house, and he had died in the attic too. That fact had always been there in the background. It was not something I thought about every second, but when you are sleeping in that same part of the house at night, it is hard not to feel it somewhere in your mind. Still, because I grew up there, I thought I had gotten used to it. I thought the house had already shown me whatever strange things it was going to show me. A noise in another room did not scare me the way it might scare someone visiting for the first time. A creak on the floorboards was not enough to make me panic. Even the sound of footsteps, as creepy as that sounds, had become something I could almost brush off. When you grow up around a place like that, your fear changes. You learn the difference between a normal old house sound and something that truly feels wrong. At least, I thought I had. That night, My husband and I were asleep in the guest bedroom in the attic. It was past midnight, and everyone else in the house should have been asleep. The attic was quiet, and because of the way the house is built, you can hear almost everything when someone is moving around up there. That is important. This was not a part of the house where someone could walk around quietly without making any sound. If someone came upstairs, if someone moved through the attic, if someone opened a door or went back down, you would hear it. The old floors and the layout made sure of that. I do not remember if I was dreaming before it happened. I only remember waking up. My husband woke up too. We both came awake because of the same sound. There were footsteps outside the room. At first it was that terrible half-awake confusion where your brain is trying to understand what your ears already know. Footsteps in the attic are not a sound you want to hear when you know everyone is supposed to be asleep. For a second, I think both of us probably wanted to believe it was a normal person. Maybe my dad. Maybe one of my brothers. Maybe someone had gotten up for something and was moving around. That would have been creepy, but understandable. People wake up at night. People go to the bathroom, get water, check something, or move through the house half asleep. But then the sound changed. The footsteps turned into running. That is when the fear really hit. Walking can be explained. Running in the attic past midnight is something else. The footsteps started getting faster and closer, coming toward our room. It was not a vague noise somewhere in the house. It was outside our room, in the attic, moving in our direction. My body understood the danger before my mind could explain it. There is something deeply wrong about hearing someone run toward the room you are sleeping in when you know no one should be there. Every step felt like it was bringing something closer to us. My husband and I were both awake now, both listening, both frozen. It is hard to describe how fast fear can fill a room. One moment you are sleeping, and the next, the room is no longer safe. The door that had just been a door suddenly becomes the only thing between you and whatever is outside. The darkness around the bed feels thicker. The air feels tight. You stop breathing normally because you are trying to hear everything. You wait for the sound to stop or turn away. You hope it will pass the room. You hope it will become something you can explain. But it did not pass. The running came closer, and then something slammed against the door. It hit hard. Not a light knock, not a tap, not a small bump like someone brushing against it. It slammed into the door with force, like something had thrown itself or hit itself against it. The sound was so loud and sudden that it felt like the whole room jumped. My husband and I were terrified. We were shaking and holding on to each other, close to tears. I do not say that lightly. I had grown up with weird sounds in that house. I thought nothing there could truly scare me anymore. But this was different. This was not an odd creak or distant talking. This sounded physical. It sounded close. It sounded like something had run right up to us and hit the door as hard as it could. For a few moments, we just held each other. I do not think either of us knew what to do. There is a kind of fear where you cannot move, because moving would make it real. If one of us got up and opened the door, then we would have to face whatever was on the other side. If we stayed still, maybe it would go away. But the problem was that after the slam, there was nothing. No retreating footsteps. No sound of someone walking away. No sound of someone going downstairs. Just silence. That silence was almost worse than the slam. If it had been my dad or one of my brothers messing with us, we should have heard them laughing, moving away, or going back down. If it had been someone sleepwalking, we should have heard footsteps after the impact. If someone had run up and slammed into the door, they would have had to go somewhere afterward. But we heard nothing. The sound had come toward us, hit the door, and then vanished into silence. In that attic, where you can hear everything, that made no sense. That is the part I still cannot explain. A person cannot run up to a door, slam against it, and then disappear without making another sound. The floors would have creaked, the steps would have carried, the stairs would have made noise, the door or walls would have shifted, something would have followed, but there was only the heavy quiet afterward, and both of us lying there shaking, waiting for another sound that never came. I wanted it to be someone in the house. I wanted that so badly. I wanted it to be my dad or my brothers messing around somehow, even though that would have been cruel and stupid. A prank would have been better than the alternative. At least then there would be a person. A person can be yelled at. A person can apologize. A person has feet that make noise when they leave. A person gives the fear a normal shape. But the silence after the slam made it feel like whatever had hit the door was not moving like a person at all. It was past midnight, and I grabbed my phone and started texting everyone in the house. I sent messages basically asking, what the hell was that? I was hoping someone would reply and say, sorry, that was me, or I tripped, or we were messing with you. I was hoping for anything that would make the situation normal. Even a ridiculous explanation would have helped. I did not care if they had scared us on purpose at that point. I just wanted someone to claim the sound. But everyone was asleep. No one had been awake. No one had been in the attic. No one had run outside our room. No one had slammed into the door. When they found out about it afterward, they were freaked out too. That made it worse because it meant nobody could give us the answer we wanted. The people in the house, the only people who could have possibly made the sound, were just as disturbed when they heard what happened. I know old houses make noise. I know that. I grew up in one. I know floorboards settle, pipes shift, wood expands and contracts, animals can get into walls, and sounds can travel in strange ways. But this was not a random creak. This had a pattern. First footsteps, then running, then closer, then a hard slam against the door. That sequence felt intentional. It felt like movement with a destination. It felt like something had started somewhere in the attic, rushed toward our room, and hit the door. A house settling does not run. Pipes do not charge down a hall. An animal in the walls does not sound like footsteps outside a bedroom and then slam against a door. That is why this experience scared me more than all the other little things I had heard growing up. The house had always had spooky energy, but most of it could be pushed away if you tried hard enough. Footsteps from another room could be an old house noise. Talking could be someone outside, a TV or sound carrying strangely. But both my husband and I woke up to this. We both heard it. We both felt the same fear. We both knew it was outside the room. That shared experience made it impossible to dismiss as a dream or imagination. If only I had heard it, maybe I would question myself more. Maybe I would say I was half asleep and my brain turned a normal sound into something scary. But my husband heard it too. He woke up too. He was shaking too. We were both there, both awake, both listening. That matters. It means the sound happened outside of me. It was not just something in my head. The attic itself felt different after that. It had already been creepy because of the house's history, and because my uncle had died there. But after the slam, the room did not feel like a room anymore. It felt like a place something had tried to enter. That door became the focus of everything. I kept staring at it, listening, waiting to see if it would happen again. I kept thinking about the space just beyond it, the hallway or landing or whatever area outside the room, and how something had been there only moments before. Or at least it sounded like something had been there. The worst part was imagining the moment before the slam. Whatever made that sound had been getting closer. We had heard it coming. That means there were a few seconds where it was on its way to us. There is something terrible about hearing fear approach. A sudden slam out of nowhere would have been scary, but hearing the footsteps turn into running first gave us time to understand that something was coming. It built the panic step by step. First, someone is walking, then they are running, then they are right outside, then impact. It felt almost like something wanted us to hear it coming. I do not like that thought, but it is hard not to have it. If the sound was paranormal, if something in that house made itself known that night, then the sequence feels deliberate. It did not just make a random noise, it moved toward the room. It hit the door. It scared us awake and left us in silence. Whether it was connected to my uncle, the attic, the house itself, or something else, I do not know. I would never want to claim I know exactly what it was. But I know it felt aware. It felt directed at us. And it worked. It scared us badly. I had grown up used to that house's oddness, but this crossed a line. Before that night, I thought I was basically immune to it. I had heard enough strange things that I could roll my eyes and move on. But that night taught me that I was not immune at all. I had only gotten used to the quieter things. The house still had the ability to terrify me if it wanted to. My husband's reaction also stayed with me. He did not grow up in that house the way I did, so he did not have the same history with its sounds. But he was there, and he heard exactly what I heard. Seeing him scared made the experience feel even more real. Sometimes, when you grow up in a strange house, you can start to doubt yourself because the experiences become part of your personal history. But when someone else hears something that intense with you, someone who did not grow up normalizing the weirdness, it confirms that it was not just the house as usual. We held each other because there was nothing else to do. That sounds simple, but in that moment, it was survival. Neither of us wanted to be the one to get up. Neither of us wanted to open the door. Neither of us wanted to look into the attic hallway and see what might be standing there. Or worse, see nothing at all. Sometimes nothing is scarier than something. If we had opened the door and seen a person, there would have been fear, but also an answer. If we opened it and saw empty space, then we would have had to accept that the running and the slam had come from nowhere. I do not remember if we ever opened the door that night, or if we waited until morning. What I remember is the fear, the texting, the silence, and the fact that nobody in the house had done it. I remember lying there with my husband, shaken to the point of tears, trying to make sense of something that did not fit any normal explanation. I remember hoping for a text back that would make it all go away, and instead, getting the truth later that everyone had been asleep. The next day, I am sure the house looked like itself again. Old houses are good at doing that. In the daylight, the same attic that felt haunted at midnight can look almost harmless. The door is just a door. The hallway is just a hallway. The stairs are just stairs. You can stand there and try to recreate the sound in your mind, but the house gives you nothing. No marks, no proof, no explanation. Just ordinary walls and old floors acting like they did not scare you half to death a few hours earlier. But I know what we heard. It was not a dream. It was not only me. My husband woke up too. We heard footsteps outside the room, then running, then a hard slam against the door. We heard no one leave. We heard no stairs. We heard no retreating steps. No one else in the house was awake. Everyone was freaked out when they found out. That is why the experience still stands out from every other strange thing in that house. It was not just spooky energy. It was not just an odd noise in an old home. It was something moving toward us, something rushing closer, something hitting the door with force while we were alone in that attic room after midnight. And then, nothing. That silence after the slam is the part I cannot get over. In a house where you can hear everything, Something made a huge sound right outside our door and then left no sound behind. No footsteps away, no stair noise, no movement. It was like whatever had run to us had disappeared the second it hit the door. I thought nothing in that house could scare me anymore. That night proved me wrong. I was asleep, or at least I had been asleep when it happened. At that time, I was working odd hours, so my sleep schedule was not exactly normal. Anyone who has worked strange hours knows how it can mess with your body. You sleep when other people are awake. You wake up when the world feels too quiet. Your mind is tired at the wrong times. And sometimes your body feels like it is moving through life a few steps behind everyone else. Because of that, I know there are easy explanations people might reach for. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe I had been dreaming. I have thought about all of that myself. I have had weird dreams before. I have had those moments where you wake up confused and your brain takes a few seconds to understand where you are. But this did not feel like that. This felt different from anything I had ever experienced. I woke up suddenly, though I do not remember exactly what pulled me awake. I do not remember hearing a loud noise or feeling a hand on me. One moment I was asleep, and the next I was awake enough to realize something was beside my bed. The room was not normal. The air next to me looked wrong. There was a strange fog there, close to the bed, close enough that it felt like it was in my space. At first, my mind tried to understand it as fog, smoke, mist, or some kind of blur in the dark. But almost immediately, I felt that it was more than that. It did not look like simple fog hanging in the room. It had a shape to it, a presence to it, almost like the blurred outline of a person. That is the closest way I can describe it. It was not a clear person standing beside me. I did not see a face, clothes, eyes, or anything sharp like that. It was more like the shape of someone seen through heavy blur, like a body made out of fog, but not exactly formless. It had enough structure that my brain did not read it as just a patch of air or light. It seemed like something was there, and it seemed aware. That was the part that made my body react before I could reason with myself. It did not just exist beside the bed. It felt like it was moving toward me. I know how that sounds. Fog should not feel sentient. Fog should not feel like it has intent. Fog should not feel like it is approaching you on purpose. But in that moment, every part of me registered it as a threat. It was not a slow, confused thought. It was not me lying there and deciding, that looks scary. It was instant. My whole body seemed to decide before my mind had time to form a sentence. Something was there. It was too close. It was coming toward me. I had to defend myself. I started violently punching and kicking at it. I did not do it lightly. I did not wave my hand through the air like someone testing a shadow. I reacted like something was attacking me or about to attack me. My arms and legs moved with real force. I was throwing punches and kicks at the space next to my bed because whatever I saw there felt like it needed to be kept away from me. It felt like survival. I was not trying to be brave, and I was not trying to prove anything. I was scared in a very physical way, the kind of fear that lives in your nerves before it becomes a thought. My body went into fight mode immediately. That is one of the things that still bothers me most. I am not someone who reacts like that to every strange thing. I have had bad dreams. I have woken up confused. I have been overtired. I have had moments where something in the dark looked odd, and then, after a second, turned out to be a pile of clothes or a shadow. But I have never reacted like that before. Not with that level of violence. Not with that feeling that my body had taken control because it knew I was in danger. It felt like my body knew before I did. The fog-like thing was close enough that I did not feel like I had time to turn on a light or sit there studying it. There was no calm investigation, no careful blinking to see if it would clear, no waiting to decide whether it was real. The reaction happened too fast. My arms were already swinging, my legs were already kicking. I was trying to push it back, hit it, stop it, make it leave. I remember the feeling of panic in my chest and the strange sense that I was fighting something that should not have been physical, but still felt present enough to fight. That contradiction is hard to explain. If it had been a person, then punching and kicking would make sense. If it had been only fog, then punching and kicking would be ridiculous. But it felt like something between those things. It looked misty, blurred, unclear, but it did not feel empty. It felt like there was an intelligence or a presence inside it, like the fog was only the outer shape of something else. Like whatever it was did not need a solid body to make my body understand it as dangerous. I do not know how long it lasted. Experiences like that do not always follow normal time. It may have been only a few seconds, but it felt much longer, because fear stretches everything out. When your body is flooded with adrenaline, every movement feels sharp. The room becomes too real and too unreal at the same time. You are aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat, the feeling of your muscles moving, the bed beneath you, the space in front of you. At the same time, your mind is struggling to understand how any of it can be happening. Eventually, the moment ended. I do not know if the fog disappeared, backed away, broke apart, or if my vision cleared. I only know that the immediate threat was no longer there in the same way. But even after it was gone, I did not feel normal, not even close. I had goosebumps all over me. My body felt strange for hours afterward. That is another reason I cannot dismiss it as just a weird dream. Dreams can scare you, yes, and sometimes a nightmare can leave you unsettled. But this felt like something had happened to my body, not only my mind. I was physically shaken. The fear stayed in my skin. It stayed in my chest. It stayed in the air around the bed. For hours after, I felt weird, not just a little spooked, weird in a deep way, like my nervous system had been pushed into a state it did not know how to come back from. The goosebumps did not feel like a quick chill. They felt like a reaction to something that my body still believed had been there. I kept replaying it, trying to understand what I saw and why I had reacted so strongly. I kept asking myself if I had dreamed it, if I had woken up in the middle of some nightmare, if my tired brain had created a figure out of darkness and air. But no explanation felt complete. I know what overtired feels like. I know what it is like to be exhausted from odd work hours. Sometimes you wake up feeling disconnected. Sometimes your thoughts are slow. Sometimes you see things in the dark and need a moment to understand them. I have had those experiences. This was not like that. This was not me slowly realizing I had mistaken a coat for a person. This was a full-body alarm. It was immediate and overwhelming. It felt like something beside me had triggered a part of my brain that exists to keep me alive. That is what makes the memory so unsettling. I did not choose fear. I did not build fear up in my mind. My body simply knew, or believed it knew. It decided there was a threat next to my bed, and it made me fight. There is something terrifying about that, because the body sometimes notices things before the conscious mind does. You can sense movement before you fully see it. You can feel danger before you can explain it. That night, every instinct I had said that the fog-like shape was not harmless. I have tried to think of every normal explanation. Maybe it was sleep paralysis, except I was not paralyzed. I was doing the opposite. I was moving violently, punching and kicking. Maybe it was a hypnopompic hallucination, one of those things people see when they wake from sleep. That is possible, especially with a bad sleep schedule. But even if that explains the visual part, it does not fully explain how real it felt in my whole body, or why the reaction was so unlike me. Maybe the room had some actual fog, smoke, or light effect, and my brain shaped it into a person. But where would fog come from next to my bed? Why would it move toward me? Why would it feel aware? Maybe it was only my mind. Maybe the combination of odd hours, exhaustion, darkness, and waking up too suddenly created something that was not really there. I can accept that as a possibility, but I cannot make it feel true. There are experiences you can explain on paper, but still not explain inside yourself. This was one of those. The logic of "you were tired" is simple, but it does not match the raw feeling of waking up and seeing something next to your bed that your body instantly treats like an enemy. The shape being fog-like made it worse in some ways. A solid figure would have been terrifying, but at least it would have been easier to define. A person, a shadow, an intruder, a face, but this was unclear, and that lack of clarity made it more disturbing. It was there enough to scare me, but not there enough to understand. It had form, but not detail. It had movement, but not a normal body. It felt like a presence, but looked like mist. My mind had nothing stable to hold on to. The bed is supposed to be one of the safest places in a room. It is where you let yourself become helpless. You sleep there. You close your eyes there. You trust the room enough to stop watching it. So waking up to something beside your bed feels like a betrayal of that safety. It is not like seeing something far away across a field. It is not like hearing a noise outside. It is right there, in the space where you are most vulnerable. If something is beside your bed when you wake up, you have no distance, no preparation, no time to think. That is exactly how it felt. Too close, too sudden, too wrong. I remember the feeling more than any clear image. The fog, the blurred outline, the sense of a person, the movement toward me, and then the fight response. Those pieces are burned into the memory. I do not remember seeing it fade slowly or vanish dramatically. I do not remember any sound. I do not remember a voice. I remember my body reacting like I had no choice. I remember goosebumps. I remember feeling disturbed long after the room should have felt normal again. That lingering feeling is important. Sometimes when you wake from a nightmare, the fear fades once you turn on a light or take a few breaths. You realize where you are, and your brain starts to settle. This did not fade that quickly. For hours I felt off. The room did not feel normal. My body did not feel normal. It was like I had used up a huge burst of survival energy and could not calm down afterward. I kept thinking about the shape and the way it moved. I kept thinking about why I had attacked it so violently. I kept thinking that I had never felt anything like that before. I also kept thinking about the word sentient. That is the word that fits, even if it sounds strange. The fog did not feel like a random shape in the air. It felt like it had purpose. It felt like it was moving with awareness. Not fast, maybe, but toward me. That small difference matters. A curtain moving in a breeze does not feel like it wants anything. Smoke drifting through a room does not feel like it is coming for you. This felt like it was approaching. That is what made my body decide it was not safe. There is a primal kind of fear that does not need proof. It lives deeper than logic. It is the same fear that makes you turn around when you feel watched, or step away from someone before they do anything, or wake up with the feeling that something is wrong. Most of the time, maybe that fear is just your brain being cautious, but sometimes it feels like your body has picked up on something real before you can explain it. That night, I felt that kind of fear. It was not dramatic in my mind. It was physical. It was in my muscles, my skin, my stomach, my chest. I do not know what I would have seen if someone else had been in the room. Would they have seen anything? Would they have seen me punching at empty air? Would they have felt something too? Would they have thought I was having a nightmare? Those questions bother me because there was no witness. It was only me, waking up to something beside my bed, reacting, and then being left with the aftermath. Experiences like that are hard to talk about because from the outside, they can sound like nothing. Someone woke up and saw a fog. Someone got scared. Maybe it was a dream. But living through it did not feel like nothing. It felt like a threat had entered my room. That is the simplest way to describe it. Whether the threat was real, paranormal, psychological, or something between sleep and waking, my body experienced it as real, and I think that matters. The fear was not mild. The reaction was not casual. I did not flinch and roll over. I fought. I punched and kicked at it with everything my half-awake body had. That was not normal for me. Never in my life had I felt that or reacted to something like that. Even after time passed, the memory did not become funny or easy. Sometimes people have weird half-asleep moments and later laugh about them. They say, "I thought my laundry was a person," or "I woke up yelling because I dreamed there was a spider." This did not turn into one of those stories for me. I can describe it, but I do not laugh at it. It left me feeling like I had come very close to something I did not understand, something that did not belong beside my bed, something my body rejected before my mind could name it. The fact that it looked like fog also makes the memory feel hard to share. Fog is not supposed to be threatening. If I say there was a person standing by my bed, people understand why that is scary. If I say there was a demon or a shadow figure, they understand the shape of the fear. But saying there was a strange fog makes it sound vague. It was not vague when I saw it. It had presence. It had a kind of outline. It was not just air. It was something. I wish I could describe it better. It was almost like the blurred outline of a person, but made out of mist. Not fully solid, not fully transparent, close enough to my bed that there was no comfort in distance. Moving in a way that felt intentional. That is what I saw, or what I woke up seeing. And then my body did the rest. I do not know if it ever came back. I do not remember seeing that exact thing again. Maybe it was a one-time event caused by exhaustion. Maybe it was something that passed through and never returned. Maybe my reaction pushed it away, if that is even possible. Maybe whatever it was realized I was not going to just lie there and let it come closer. I do not know. All I know is that after it happened, the room did not feel like just a room for a while. It felt like a place where something had crossed a line. That is one of the scariest parts of experiences like this. Even if they last only a few seconds, they change your relationship with the space. The side of the bed where you saw it becomes different. The darkness near the bed feels different. Waking up in the room feels different. You start wondering if it could happen again. You wonder if there are moments when you are asleep and something is close, and you simply do not wake up to see it. That thought is deeply uncomfortable because sleep depends on trust. You have to trust that nothing is standing beside you while you are unconscious. For a long time afterward, I kept thinking about how my body reacted. I keep coming back to that because it was the most unusual part. The fog was strange, yes. The shape was scary, yes. But the reaction was what made me understand how deeply it had affected me. My body did not hesitate. It did not freeze. It attacked. That means some part of me felt there was no time to do anything else, no time to think, no time to observe, no time to decide whether it was real. Just defend. I have never had that feeling before, and I have never had it since. That is why I still remember it so strongly. It was not just fear. It was a complete alarm response, like every instinct inside me came online at once. Goosebumps, adrenaline, violence, panic. And that strange feeling that stayed for hours. Even if someone told me it was only a sleep hallucination, I would still say it was the most physically real fear I have ever felt. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe some sleep-related hallucinations are so real that the body cannot tell the difference. Maybe working odd hours pushed my brain into a strange state, and I woke up at exactly the wrong moment. Maybe my mind created the fog, gave it movement, and made my body believe it was a person coming toward me. That is possible, but if that is true, it was still unlike any dream or overtired moment I have ever had. It felt less like my mind creating something and more like my body noticing something. And that is the part I cannot shake. I woke up, and there was a strange fog beside my bed. It looked almost like the blurred outline of a person. It felt aware. It felt like it was moving toward me. My whole body decided it was a threat, and I started punching and kicking at it as hard as I could. Afterward, I had goosebumps and felt strange for hours. I have had weird dreams. I have been overtired. I have woken up confused before, but never in my life have I felt something like that, and never in my life have I reacted to anything that way. Before the next witness tells their story, take a moment to subscribe to Nachtmeyer Witness. This channel is for the late hours, when sleep is close, but the mind is still awake enough to notice every sound in the room. New true stories arrive here for anyone drawn to strange encounters, uneasy memories, and nights that never felt normal again. Leave a like if the stories have pulled you in so far. Now, let's return to the darkness. My friend had a pretty nice apartment that was also fairly new. But even though it looked clean and modern, there was always something a little off about it. It was not the kind of place you would look at from the outside and think was creepy. It was not old, broken down, or hidden away somewhere strange. It was just a normal apartment, the kind of place with clean walls, regular rooms, and the usual layout you would expect. But my friend had already told me it was a little haunted, and after staying there, I believed her. Sometimes a place does not have to look scary to feel wrong. Sometimes the strangest things happen in places that look completely normal. I was visiting her from out of state, so I was staying at her apartment for a little while. Since I was the guest, I was sleeping in the living room. That is always a little weird in someone else's home, even when you are comfortable with the person. You are not in a bedroom with a door you can shut. You are out in the open part of the apartment, close to the hallway, the kitchen, the dark corners, and whatever sounds the place makes at night. During the day, the living room felt fine, but at night, once everyone went to bed and the lights were off, it felt different. Every small noise seemed louder, and every dark doorway seemed like something you did not want to stare into for too long. One night, it was late, and we had all said goodnight. My friend went to her room with her boyfriend, and I was getting ready to settle down in the living room. I was looking at my phone while walking, probably scrolling or doing whatever people do when they are trying to wind down before sleep. The phone screen was really bright in the dark apartment, and because I was staring at it, I could not see much around me. That bright screen made the rest of the room and hallway look even darker. It was like the little square of light in my hand blocked out everything else. I was not trying to scare myself. I was not walking around thinking about ghosts. I was just moving through the apartment, looking at my phone, getting ready to sleep. Then I heard a loud giggle come from the dark room. It was not a small sound. It was not the kind of faint noise where you have to stop and ask yourself if maybe it was a pipe or something outside. It was a real giggle, loud enough and clear enough that it cut through the quiet of the apartment. It sounded like it came from the dark room, from the place I could not really see, because my phone had made my eyes adjust to the screen instead of the room around me. The sound was sudden, playful, and completely wrong for that moment. Nobody should have been giggling in the dark. For a second, I froze inside my own head. I remember thinking, did I hear that? Then almost right after that, I thought, do I even want to acknowledge that I just heard that? There are moments like that when your brain tries to give you a tiny chance to ignore something. You hear something that makes no sense, and for 1 second, you can either pretend it did not happen or accept that the room around you just changed. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to tell myself maybe it was something normal, maybe a noise from the phone, maybe a neighbor, maybe my friend or her boyfriend in the other room. But it did not feel like that. It felt close. It felt like it came from inside the apartment, from that dark room. And then my fear caught up with me. The next thing I knew, I was running through her place toward her bedroom. I did not calmly walk over and knock. I ran. I moved so fast that I basically flew into her room and over her bed. I know it must have scared both her and her boyfriend half to death, because from their point of view, I just came flying in like something was chasing me. But in that moment, I was not thinking about how I looked. I was not thinking about being dramatic or silly. I was thinking that I did not want to be alone in that living room with whatever had just giggled from the dark. Looking back, it is a little funny, because I can imagine how ridiculous I must have looked. 1 second they were probably settling into bed, and the next second I was bursting into the room and flying over the bed like I had been launched. But at the time, I was genuinely terrified. That giggle did not sound like a normal apartment sound. It did not sound like my imagination. It sounded like someone, or something, had been standing in the dark and laughing. My friend was nice about it. She did not make me feel stupid. She did not get angry or tell me I was overreacting. She walked me back to the living room and helped me calm down enough to go back to bed. That meant a lot, because when you hear something strange and react strongly, the worst thing someone can do is dismiss you right away. But she already knew the apartment had weird energy, so maybe she understood. Maybe she had heard or seen enough there that my reaction did not seem unbelievable to her. Eventually, I was able to sleep. I do not know how, because after hearing something like that, every part of the room feels different. The couch or sleeping area no longer feels like a safe place to rest. The dark corners feel too close. The hallway feels like it has too much space in it. You start listening for the giggle again, hoping you will not hear it, but also almost expecting it. But somehow, with my friend's help, I settled down and got through the night. The next night, things got even stranger. This time, I was in my friend's room with her. It was pretty late again, and we were both awake. I felt better because I was not alone in the living room. After what had happened the night before, being in the bedroom with another person felt safer. When you are with someone else, it is easier to tell yourself that if something happens, at least you will not be the only one experiencing it. That makes a big difference. Fear feels less powerful when it is shared. We were in her room, and everything seemed normal for a while. Then suddenly, I saw her rush out of the room and down the hallway. She moved fast, like she had just noticed something and needed to respond right away. I did not understand what was happening at first. She was a mother, and her kids were in the apartment, so I assumed maybe she had heard them or seen them getting up. It did not seem paranormal at first. It just looked like a parent reacting to something. A moment later, she came back into the room. She had her hand on her chest, and her face was pale. That was when I knew something was wrong. This was not the look of someone who had simply told her kids to go back to bed. She looked shocked, like the fear had hit her all at once after she realized what she had seen did not make sense. I asked her what happened, and she told me she had run out of the room because she had seen her kids go by the door. She thought they were awake and walking down the hall, so she went out to tell them to go back to bed. But when she got out there, no one was there. Then she checked, and both of her kids were asleep. That made my stomach drop. The night before, I had heard a loud giggle from a dark room. Now, the next night, my friend had seen what she thought were her kids passing by the bedroom door, but the hallway was empty, and the real kids were asleep. That was not just a sound anymore. That was a visual. She had seen movement. She had seen figures or shapes that looked enough like her children that her immediate reaction as a mother was to go after them and send them back to bed. But they had not been there. There is something deeply unsettling about seeing someone who should not be there, especially when they look like someone you know. If she had seen a random shadow, maybe it would have been easier to question. But she thought she saw her kids. That means whatever moved past the door had the size, shape, or movement of children. It was convincing enough that she did not sit there wondering what it was. She reacted immediately. She rushed out like any parent would. And then the hallway was empty. Both kids were asleep. That apartment suddenly felt much more haunted than a little haunted. The first night, I could still try to tell myself maybe I had misheard something. Maybe the giggle came from a neighbor through the wall. Maybe there was a sound from a phone or TV somewhere. Maybe I was tired from traveling. But after what happened to my friend the next night, it was harder to explain. She saw something. She knew her own kids. She knew what it looked like when they walked past her door, and when she checked, they were not awake. The fact that both things happened late at night made the apartment feel like it changed after dark. During the day, it was probably just a normal place. People talked, kids moved around, lights were on, and life made the rooms feel full. But at night, when everyone quieted down, it was like something else had room to move. A giggle from the dark, childlike figures passing a doorway, a presence that did not fully show itself, but made sure we noticed it. What creeped me out most was that the activity felt almost playful, but not in a comforting way. A giggle is usually a happy sound. Kids walking past a bedroom door should be normal in a home where kids live. But when those things happen in the wrong context, they become disturbing. A giggle from a dark, empty room does not feel innocent. Seeing children in the hallway when the real children are asleep does not feel normal. It feels like something copying the sounds and shapes of everyday life, but getting the timing wrong. That is what made the apartment feel off. It was not a dramatic haunting where things were flying across the room or doors were slamming. It was subtle, but clear enough to scare us. The apartment seemed to produce small moments that made you question what you had just experienced. A sound in the dark, a shape in the hallway, something just real enough to make you react, then gone before you could prove it. I think about how I heard the giggle while my phone was lighting up my face. Because I could not see well, my hearing became the main sense in that moment. The voice came from darkness, and I had no visual source for it. That made it feel like the dark itself had made the sound. I did not know where to look. I did not know if something was standing in the room or peeking from around a corner. All I knew was that I had heard something that sounded alive and amused. Then, my friend's experience was the opposite. She saw something, but when she went to confirm it, there was nothing there. Both moments played with the senses in different ways. I heard something without seeing it. She saw something without finding it. Both left us with no solid answer. I wonder sometimes if the thing in the apartment liked using familiar, human details. A giggle, children moving down the hall. These are not random, scary sounds. They are domestic sounds, normal sounds, sounds that belong in a home. But in that apartment, at night, they felt wrong. Maybe that is why they were so effective. A home is full of familiar sounds and movements, so when something paranormal mimics them, it can hide inside normal life for a second. You almost accept it before your brain catches up and says, "Wait, that should not be happening." My friend's reaction told me everything. She was pale, with her hand on her chest, because she had gone from ordinary parent mode to fear in seconds. She thought she was going to tell her kids to go back to bed. Instead, she found an empty hall and sleeping children. That kind of realization hits hard. It means your eyes just gave you information that the rest of reality does not support. And when that happens in your own home, it can make you feel like the place cannot be trusted. It also made me feel less embarrassed about the night before. I had run into her room like a maniac after hearing the giggle, and part of me probably wondered if I had overreacted. But after she saw something herself, it became clear that the apartment really did have something going on. I was not just tired or dramatic. There was something in that place that made itself known in ways that were hard to ignore. The whole experience also showed me how different fear feels when it is mixed with humor. I can laugh now about flying over her bed and scaring her and her boyfriend. I can laugh about how ridiculous it must have looked. But the laughter does not erase the fear. Sometimes people laugh at scary memories because it helps them tell the story. It gives them a little distance from the feeling. But at the time, I was not laughing. I was scared enough to run straight into someone else's room because I did not want to be alone with the dark. And my friend, the next night, was not laughing when she came back pale. She was shaken. She had seen something that looked enough like her kids to pull her out of the room, only to find out her kids had never moved. That would scare any parent. It is one thing to think you saw a stranger. It is another to think you saw your own children where they were not. There is something emotionally disturbing about that, because it uses your protective instinct against you. You move toward it because you think it is your kids, and then you realize there was nothing there. I do not know what was in that apartment. I do not know if it was a ghost, some kind of energy, something attached to the place, or something else entirely. My friend had already said the apartment was a little haunted, and after those nights, I understood why. It did not feel like a full-on evil place, at least not from what I experienced, but it definitely did not feel empty. Something seemed to be there, showing up in small, unsettling ways. The fact that the apartment was nice and new made it even stranger. People often expect hauntings to belong to old houses with long histories, old wood floors, basements, attics, and dark corners. But this place did not fit that image. It was modern enough, normal enough, and clean enough that you would not expect anything strange to happen there. That made the activity feel more out of place. It was not the building itself that looked haunted. It was the feeling inside it after dark. Sometimes I wonder if whatever was there was connected to the land, or to something someone brought in, or to the people living there. I do not know. Apartments can carry energy from previous tenants, from neighbors, from the building itself, or from things people bring into them. They can also be strange, because so many lives overlap in one place. You share walls with people you do not know. Sounds travel. Shadows move under doors. Normal apartment life can already feel a little eerie at night. But what we experienced went beyond that. A loud giggle from a dark room does not feel like a neighbor through the wall when it happens right there. Figures that look like your kids passing your bedroom door do not feel like normal hallway shadows when your real kids are asleep. That is why both moments stayed with me. They were simple, but too direct. The sound was too clear. My friend's reaction was too real. The apartment felt like it had a presence that liked to get close enough to be noticed, then disappear before anyone could fully confront it. After my friend walked me back to bed that first night, I did sleep, but I doubt it was peaceful at first. I probably lay there listening, trying not to stare too hard into the dark. Once you hear something giggle from an empty room, the silence afterward feels loaded. You start waiting for it to happen again. Every little shift in the apartment becomes suspicious. You wonder if the next sound will be footsteps, or another laugh, or something moving closer. The living room no longer feels like a guest space. It feels like you are sleeping in the open, exposed to whatever wants to pass through. The next night, being in my friend's room should have felt safer, and for a while it did. But when she rushed out and came back pale, I realized the bedroom was not a barrier either. Whatever was happening in that apartment could move through the hallway, past the door, close enough to be seen. That made the whole place feel connected in a way I did not like. The living room, the dark room, the hallway, the bedroom door, all of it felt like part of the same thing. I still think about the order of the events. First I hear a giggle. Then, the next night, she sees what looks like children. Both experiences had a childlike quality. A giggle, small figures in the hall. That may have been coincidence, but it makes the haunting feel even stranger. It did not present itself as a tall, dark shadow or a deep voice. It came through as something young, or something pretending to be young. And that can be just as creepy, sometimes more so, because childlike sounds in the wrong place can feel deeply unnatural. I am not saying I know what it was trying to do. Maybe it was harmless and curious. Maybe it was residual energy. Maybe it was something playful. Maybe it was something that enjoyed scaring people. All I know is how it felt in the moment. The giggle made me panic. My friend seeing the kids made her go pale. Neither of us walked away thinking it was nothing. The strange thing about haunted places is that they can still be livable. People imagine a haunted apartment must be constant terror, but a lot of the time, life continues normally. You cook, sleep, talk, laugh, take care of kids, use your phone, and have guests over. Then, every once in a while, something happens that reminds you there may be more in the space than just the people on the lease. That was how my friend's apartment felt. Most of the time, it was just her place. Then, late at night, it would give you a reason to remember it was not completely ordinary. I left that visit with a story I still think about. I went there from out of state expecting to sleep in my friend's living room and hang out like normal. Instead, I heard a loud giggle come from a dark room and ran into her bedroom so fast I probably scared everyone worse than the ghost did. Then, the next night, I watched my friend rush out to tell her kids to go back to bed, only for her to return pale because the hallway was empty and the kids were asleep. Those 2 nights were enough for me. I do not need a haunted place to throw chairs or scream my name to believe something is wrong. Sometimes all it takes is a laugh from a room that should be empty and a mother seeing her sleeping children walk past a door when they never left their beds. That apartment may have been nice, new, and normal looking, but after that, I could not think of it as just a regular apartment anymore. Something was there, and whatever it was, it liked to show itself just enough to make you run. When I was 18, I was working as a nanny for a family that lived in a very large house in a nice neighborhood. It was the kind of house that already felt a little intimidating just because of its size. I would not be surprised if it was over 6,000 square feet, maybe even more. It had multiple entrances, long spaces, and enough rooms that you could be in one part of the house and feel completely separated from everything happening in another part. During the day, it was beautiful and impressive. It was in a good area, the kind of neighborhood where people assume they are safe because the homes are expensive and the streets look clean and quiet. But at night, especially when you were alone inside it, that same house felt very different. The size that made it feel grand in daylight made it feel impossible to fully watch after dark. This happened during the holidays, when the family I worked for went out of town. I was left alone in the home, which did not seem like a huge deal at first. I was 18, old enough to be trusted, and I had spent plenty of time there because of my nanny job. It was not my house, but it was familiar enough that I knew my way around. Still, being alone in someone else's large home is not the same as being alone in your own room or your own apartment. You do not know every small sound. You do not know which floorboards make noise, which doors shift with air pressure, or which parts of the house always settle at night. In a house that large, even normal sounds can feel like they are coming from too far away to identify. There were also multiple entrances, which becomes important. In a smaller house, you can feel like you know where the doors are and whether they are secure. In that house, there were different ways in and out, and that made it feel harder to relax. You could lock everything, set the alarm, and still feel like there was some door or corner or hallway you had not thought about enough. A big house gives you space, but it also gives hiding places. It gives you distance between yourself and the outside. It gives someone else ways to move without being immediately noticed. One night while the family was gone, I was in the shower. That is probably one of the most vulnerable places you can be in any house. You cannot hear clearly because of the running water. You are not dressed. You are not near your phone, your keys, or anything that makes you feel in control. You have to trust that the house is secure because you are not in a position to react quickly if something happens. I was showering like normal when I suddenly heard the alarm go off. The sound of an alarm in a large, empty house hits you in a very specific way. It is loud and sudden and meant to make you panic. Your brain does not get to slowly process it. 1 second, you are in the shower, and the next, your whole body is alert because the house is telling you something has been opened or triggered. I remember that immediate rush of fear and confusion. I had been alone. The family was out of town. The alarm should not have been going off unless something had happened. I got out and looked downstairs, and that was when I saw the back door open. That image is still disturbing to think about. Not just the alarm, but the open door. A door that should have been closed was standing open while I was alone in the house. The alarm had not gone off for no reason. Something had triggered it, and the back door was open. That meant either someone had opened it, or somehow it had opened on its own at the exact time I was in the shower. Neither option felt comforting. A large house can make you feel protected because there are walls and locks and an alarm system, but the second you see an exterior door open, all of that protection feels thin. At first, I tried to make the situation normal in my head. I thought maybe the next door neighbors were messing with me. That idea came up because the neighbors were not strangers to me. It was my best friend's dad and stepmom who lived next door, so if anyone might play some dumb joke or try to scare me, I thought maybe it could have been them. When you are scared, your mind grabs for any explanation that makes the threat less serious. A prank is scary, but it is not the same as an unknown person entering the house. A neighbor messing around is creepy and annoying, but at least it means you know who is behind it. But they were not home when it happened. That removed the easiest explanation. They could not have been the ones messing with me if they were not even there. So I was left with the back door open, the alarm going off, and no good reason for it. I do not remember every single thing I did in that moment, but I remember the feeling. I remember the way fear changes a house. Before the alarm, the rooms were just rooms. After the alarm, every doorway and hallway felt like a place someone could be standing. Every corner felt like it needed to be checked, but also like I did not want to check it. The house was too big to feel certain about anything. In a house that size, being alone after something like that is awful. You can look around, but you cannot really know. You can check the obvious places, but there are closets, bathrooms, guest rooms, storage areas, and corners you do not fully think about until you are scared. If someone came in and wanted to hide, they could. That thought alone is enough to make your skin crawl. A person could be inside with you, and you might not know until they wanted you to know. A few nights later, I decided to have some girlfriends come over. It was not a huge party, just a small get-together. Looking back, part of me wonders if I wanted people around because I did not want to be alone in that house again. At the time, it probably felt normal. I was 18, the family was out of town, and having friends over made the place feel less empty. When other people are around, a large house becomes fun again. The rooms feel open instead of threatening. The silence fills with voices. The fear from a previous night starts to seem smaller, like maybe you had overreacted. That night, we stayed up late. We talked, hung out, and eventually everyone passed out around 3 in the morning. That time matters because by then, the house would have been quiet again. The fun was over. People were asleep. The lights may have been low or off. The house was no longer full of noise and movement. It had settled back into that deep nighttime stillness. Only this time I was not alone. I had friends there, which should have made everything feel safer. Then the alarm went off again. This time, the side doors opened to the side entrance. The fear came back instantly, but worse, because now it was no longer a one-time weird thing. Once could maybe be blamed on a faulty door, a bad latch, a prank, wind, or some random mistake. Twice is different. Twice gives the event a pattern. The first time, I was alone and the back door opened. The second time, after my friends and I had all passed out, the alarm went off and the side entrance doors opened. Different door, different night. Same kind of violation. A door opening when it should not have opened. That is when I started feeling convinced that someone had been in that house. Not just someone trying to break in and leaving immediately. I became convinced that someone came into that house and was inside with me, maybe the whole time, and later left when we were all asleep. That thought still creeps me out. It is one thing to imagine someone opening a door and running away when the alarm sounds. It is another thing to imagine someone entering a huge house, hiding inside it, and waiting. The first is scary. The second is horrifying. The house was big enough for that fear to feel possible. In a small home, you might be able to clear every room quickly and feel certain. But in a house over 6,000 square feet with multiple entrances, the idea of someone hiding is not far-fetched. There were so many places a person could have gone. They could have slipped into a room no one was using. They could have waited in a closet, a basement area, a storage space, or some far part of the house where we would not hear them. If they knew the layout better than I did, that would make it even worse. What makes it so creepy is that nothing was taken. The police came and checked out the house, and not a single thing was missing. That should have made me feel better, but it did not. If someone breaks in and steals something, at least the motive makes sense. They came for money, electronics, jewelry, or whatever they could grab. It is still frightening, but it has an explanation. When someone enters or opens doors and takes nothing, the question becomes darker. What did they want? Why were they there? Were they watching? Were they looking for someone? Were they testing the house? Did they have another reason entirely? At the time, I had multiple stalkers on MySpace. That detail sounds dated now, but yes, it was that long ago. MySpace was a big part of life then, and people were a lot less careful online than they are now. It was easy for people to find out things about you, follow your posts, message you, and act like they knew you even when they did not. I had people watching me online in ways that made me uncomfortable, and I never knew exactly who some of them were. That made the house situation feel even more personal and frightening. It was not just a random alarm issue in my mind. There was a real possibility that someone had been paying attention to me. When you are 18, you do not always understand how serious that kind of attention can be. You know it is creepy, but you might not fully understand the danger until later. Looking back now, the idea that I had stalkers online while staying alone in a huge house with multiple entrances makes my stomach drop. If someone knew where I was, or figured out I was alone there while the family was away, that changes everything. Suddenly, the open doors do not feel random. They feel targeted. I never found out who it was. That is one of the worst parts. There was no clear answer, no person caught, no stolen item, no explanation from the alarm company that made it all go away. Just the memory of alarms going off, doors open, and the feeling that someone had been inside. The police checked the house, but once they found nothing missing and no obvious intruder standing there was only so much they could do. A big house can hide a lot before police arrive, and if someone had already left, they were gone. I think about that first night in the shower a lot. If someone really was inside or trying to get inside, they picked one of the worst moments for me. I was alone, exposed, and unable to respond quickly. The alarm went off while I was in the shower, and when I looked, the back door was open. If someone entered then, did they know I was in the shower? Could they hear the water running? Did they choose that moment because they knew I would be vulnerable? Or was it coincidence? Those are the kinds of questions that make the memory so disturbing. I also think about the second night, when my girlfriends were there. We had all passed out around 3 in the morning, and then the alarm went off again. If someone had been hiding in the house before that, they may have waited until everyone was asleep to leave. That possibility is horrible. It means we could have been laughing, talking, and moving around that house while someone else was hidden somewhere inside, listening to us. It means we may have felt safe because there were several of us, while the danger was already inside the walls with us. The side entrance doors opening makes that fear feel real to me. If someone left through that entrance, the alarm would make sense. Maybe they had been inside and used that door to get out. Maybe they opened it after we were asleep, thinking they could slip away. Maybe the alarm scared them, but by then they were already leaving. I do not know. I only know that the thought has never fully left me. People sometimes assume that nice neighborhoods are safe, but that is not always true. A nice neighborhood can make people less cautious. Big houses often have more entrances, more windows, more blind spots, and more places to hide. Wealthy or nice-looking areas can also make houses targets, though in this case, again, nothing was stolen. That is what keeps pushing the story away from a simple burglary in my mind. If someone wanted valuables, they had a huge house to search. Yet nothing was taken. That makes the motive feel less like theft and more like presence. Like whoever it was wanted to be there, not just take something. The family being out of town may have mattered too. A house that looks occupied but has the owners gone can create a strange opportunity. Maybe someone knew the family was away. Maybe someone thought the house would be empty. Maybe they did not know I was staying there. But then, after the first alarm, they would know. If they came back again a few nights later, that suggests either they were not scared off, or they had a reason to return. That is not comforting. I do not know if the alarm system showed which door had opened, but I remember the back door the first time, and the side entrance the second time. Those were not small things. Those were entry points. A house alarm does not make you imagine an open door. When you see a door open, you know something physically happened. Whether it was a faulty latch or a person, the result is the same. The boundary between inside and outside was broken. The boundary is what matters. A home is supposed to have a clear line. Inside is safe. Outside is separate. Doors and locks are supposed to hold that line. But when a door is suddenly open, and you do not know why, the whole house changes. You cannot trust the walls the same way. You start wondering how long the door has been open. You wonder if someone is already inside. You wonder if they are still there. You wonder if they are watching from some dark room while you stand there trying to be brave. I can still imagine standing in that huge house after the alarm, trying to decide what to do. Every part of the house must have felt too large. The stairs, the hallways, the rooms, the corners, everything. When you are scared in a small space, at least you can see most of it. In a large house, fear spreads out. It fills rooms you are not even in. It makes you picture someone standing in a hallway on the other side of the house, or waiting behind a door you have not opened. You do not know where the danger is, so it feels like it could be anywhere. The fact that my best friend's dad and stepmom lived next door should have made me feel safer. But after realizing they were not home, it made me feel more alone. For a moment, I had an explanation that made sense emotionally. The neighbors were messing with me. Then that explanation disappeared. The people I might have blamed, the people who might have helped, were not even there. That left the house, the alarm, the open door, and me. After the second alarm, having friends there did not fully help either. It is scary in a different way when other people are present and something still happens. You feel less alone, but you also feel responsible. You invited people over, and now something is wrong. You wonder if everyone is safe. You wonder if someone is hiding. You wonder if you should all leave. You wonder if you are overreacting. Fear becomes confused because there are more voices, more opinions, more people waking up and asking what is happening. But the open door is still the open door. I do not remember every detail of the police coming, but I remember that they checked the house and nothing was taken. No stolen items, no obvious sign that someone had grabbed valuables and run. That lack of theft has always been one of the creepiest parts for me. It means the person either did not have time, did not find what they wanted, or never came for things at all. None of those options are great, but the last one is the worst. A person who enters a house and does not steal may have been there for a person. Because of the MySpace situation, that thought still gives me goosebumps. Having stalkers online already makes you feel watched in a way that is hard to explain. You do not always know what they know. You do not know if they are nearby or far away. You do not know if they are just sending creepy messages or if they are willing to cross into real life. When something happens physically, like a door opening in a house where you are staying, the online fear suddenly feels very real. The screen is not a barrier anymore. The creepy attention may have stepped into the real world. I never connected it to one specific person because I never found out who did it. That uncertainty is part of why it still bothers me. If I knew, even if the truth was scary, at least I would have an answer. Instead, I have possibilities. A random intruder. A stalker. Someone who knew the family was gone. Someone who knew I was there. Someone who got in and hid. Someone who came and went without taking anything. Someone who may have been inside while I was showering. Someone who may have left while my friends and I were asleep. The thought that they could have been in the house with me the whole time is the one that truly stays with me. A large house can hold silence in a way that feels normal. You can be in one room and hear nothing from another. Someone could move carefully, slowly, quietly. They could wait. They could listen. The house could hide them without even trying. That is why, to this day, I am convinced someone came into that house and was inside it with me before leaving later. I cannot prove it, but the feeling has never left. Maybe there is a simple explanation. Maybe the doors had problems. Maybe the alarm was faulty. Maybe wind or pressure somehow opened doors that were not fully latched. Maybe the family had not secured something properly before leaving. But 2 separate nights, 2 separate entrances, alarms going off, and no one home next door to blame? That feels like more than a random mechanical problem. And even if the locks or doors were faulty, that would mean the house was still vulnerable, which is scary in its own way. I also think about how young I was. 18 feels grown when you are 18, but looking back, that is still very young. I was alone in a massive house, working a job, carrying responsibility, and dealing with something that would scare many adults. I was trying to be calm and practical because that is what you are supposed to do, but the situation was not normal. A huge house, holiday emptiness, alarm sounds, open doors, possible stalkers, police checking and finding nothing missing. That is a lot for anyone to sit with. The house itself probably looked perfect from the outside. Nice neighborhood, big home, clean property, the kind of place people pass and assume nothing bad happens there. But inside, during those nights, it felt like a maze of possible hiding places. That is one thing I learned from the experience. Safety is not only about how nice a place looks. Sometimes a big, beautiful house can feel more frightening than a small old one because there is too much space to control. I do not know what the person wanted, if it was a person. But I know what I felt. I know the fear of hearing an alarm while I was in the shower and seeing the back door open. I know the confusion of thinking maybe the neighbors were messing with me, only to find out they were not even home. I know the shock of the alarm going off again a few nights later after my friends and I had fallen asleep. I know the dread of seeing that another entrance had opened. I know the police found nothing taken. And I know the way the whole thing tied into the fact that I had people watching me online at the time, people I did not fully know and could not fully identify. That combination is why it still creeps me out. It was not just a house alarm. It was the open doors. It was not just open doors. It was the timing. It was not just timing. It was the possibility that someone had entered, stayed hidden, and left when we were asleep. It was the fact that nothing was stolen, which made the whole thing feel less like a robbery and more like something directed at me or at the people inside. Sometimes the scariest part of a story is the thing that did not happen, or the thing you cannot prove happened. I never saw a face. I never heard footsteps. I never found someone hiding in a closet. I never caught anyone on camera. But the alarms went off, the doors were open, and the police found nothing missing. That leaves a blank space where the explanation should be, and my mind still fills that blank with the same thought: someone was inside. Even now, years later, I get goosebumps thinking about it. I think about that house during the holidays, large and quiet, with the family away. I think about being alone in the shower when the alarm screamed through the rooms. I think about the back door open downstairs. I think about my friends asleep a few nights later, all of us unaware until the alarm went off again. I think about the side doors to the side entrance opening, like someone had chosen another way out. I think about a person moving through that huge house without taking a single thing. And I think about how terrifying it is to realize that a locked house does not always mean you are alone. Something very similar happened to me about 10 years ago, and even now, when I think back on it, I still remember the feeling more clearly than anything else. It was not just a dream, and it was not like waking up from a normal nightmare. It was a physical sensation first, something heavy and strange that would come over me at night while I was falling asleep. It always started the same way. I would be lying there, trying to drift off, and then I would feel this heavy weight begin at my feet. It did not feel like a blanket. It did not feel like my legs falling asleep. It felt like a pressure, like something was slowly climbing up my body from the bottom of the bed toward my head. At that time, I had to sleep on my back because I wore a back brace. That made everything worse. I could not easily roll around or change positions the way most people can when they get uncomfortable. I was stuck sleeping flat, and because of that, I felt trapped in my own body when this pressure started. It would begin at my feet, then move up my legs, then my torso, slowly working its way higher. Every time it happened, I would feel this deep fear building in me. I did not know what would happen if it reached my head, but I knew I did not want to find out. So before it got that far, I would force myself to move. I would turn as much as I could, or shift enough to break whatever was happening. And every time I did that, the sensation would stop. That became the pattern for a while. I would be falling asleep, feel the weight begin at my feet, and then panic as it moved upward. It was not fast, but it was steady. It felt like something with purpose, like it knew where it was going. I would wait only as long as I could stand it, and then I would break out of it. I never let it get all the way to my head. I was too scared. I had no words for it then, and I did not fully understand sleep paralysis or the strange things the body can do between waking and sleeping. I only knew that something heavy seemed to climb over me in the dark, and that if I moved before it reached my head, I could stop it. But one night, I finally gave in. I do not know exactly why I decided to let it happen that time. Maybe I was tired of being afraid. Maybe curiosity became stronger than fear. Maybe part of me wanted to know if there was a real ending to it, or if it would just fade away on its own. When something happens over and over, it can make you feel trapped by the mystery. You start thinking, what if I just let it continue once? What if nothing bad happens? What if I am stopping it every time right before it explains itself? So that night, when the pressure started again at my feet, I did not fight it right away. I stayed still. The weight moved upward like it always did. From my feet, up my legs, up through my body. It was uncomfortable, but I forced myself not to turn. That was hard, because every instinct in me wanted to stop it. My body wanted to move before it got too far. My mind kept warning me that I was making a mistake, but I had decided I wanted to see what would happen, so I let it keep going. The pressure kept climbing higher and higher until it reached my neck, then my head. I remember the moment it got to the top of my head, because that was when everything changed. As soon as the pressure reached the top of my head, I was pushed out of my body. That is the only way I can describe it. It did not feel like I imagined floating. It did not feel like a dream scene starting. It felt like I was suddenly forced out of myself, like something separated me from my body in one quick motion. One moment I was lying in bed, feeling that pressure rise over me, and the next I was above my bed, up near the ceiling. I was looking down at myself sleeping. I could see my own body below me. I was at the top of the room, near the ceiling, watching myself from above. The fear hit me instantly. I had wanted to know what would happen, but the moment it actually happened, I wanted it to stop. Seeing yourself from outside your own body is not something your mind is ready for, no matter how curious you think you are. It was terrifying. Everything felt wrong because I was not where I was supposed to be. I was not inside myself. I was not lying in the bed the way I should have been. I was above it, looking down. And the sight of my own body sleeping there made the situation feel too real and too impossible at the same time. I freaked out and went back into my body. I do not know how else to explain that part either. It was like the panic pulled me back. The second I got back in, I shot up out of bed, flinging my arms out to the side. It was sudden and violent, like my body had snapped awake all at once. I was no longer calm or curious. I was scared, breathing hard, and trying to understand what had just happened. I had gone from lying still and letting the pressure take over, to watching myself from the ceiling, to slamming back into my body and sitting up in bed. It was one of the strangest and most frightening experiences of my life. At the time, I did not fully understand it. I only knew that it had felt real. It did not feel like an ordinary dream. I have had dreams before, and I know how dreams feel when you wake up from them. This was different. The pressure had been physical. The movement out of my body had felt sudden and forced. The view from above my bed felt clear. The panic felt real, and the way I shot up afterward felt like my body had been released from something. Now, looking back, I know it was sleep paralysis, or at least connected to sleep paralysis. I have had it a few times since then, and those later experiences helped me understand the pattern more. Sleep paralysis can happen when your mind wakes up while your body is still in that sleep state where it cannot move properly. It can come with pressure, fear, strange sensations, and even terrifying visions. Some people feel something sitting on their chest. Some people see figures in the room. Some hear voices. Some feel like they are being pulled, touched, watched, or attacked. For me, that early experience was the heavy weight climbing from my feet to my head, and then the feeling of being pushed out of my body. But even knowing the sleep paralysis explanation does not fully remove the fear from the memory. There is a difference between understanding a thing later and living through it in the moment. In the moment, I did not know what was happening. I was alone in my body, unable to trust it, feeling something move over me in the dark. Then I left my body, or at least experienced something that felt exactly like leaving my body. Maybe it was astral projection. Maybe it was a sleep paralysis hallucination. Maybe it was both in some way I still do not understand. I cannot prove what it was. I can only describe what it felt like. And what it felt like was being pushed out of myself. The later experiences were different, but they had the same dark feeling around them. I have had sleep paralysis a few more times since then, but those times came with demons. That is how I experienced them. They did not feel like random dream shapes or harmless shadows. They felt demonic. There was a heaviness, a fear, and a sense of evil that came with them. People can call it whatever they want, and I understand that sleep paralysis has scientific explanations. But when you are in it, when you feel something dark there with you, it does not feel like a simple sleep issue. It feels like you are under attack. That is part of why the first experience stands out so much. It felt like the beginning of something. The heavy weight, the pressure reaching my head, the out-of-body feeling, the fear, and then later the attacks that felt demonic. At the time, I did not have the same faith and understanding I would later have. I was just trying to survive the nights and get sleep. But the experiences kept showing me that something was wrong. Sleep was supposed to be rest, but for a while, it became a place where I had to be on guard. The worst thing about those nights was the helplessness. When you are awake and scared, at least you can move. You can turn on a light, leave the room, call someone, pray, check the door, or do something with your body. But sleep paralysis takes that away. It traps you between sleeping and waking. Your mind is aware, but your body will not respond the way you need it to. That helplessness makes any fear 10 times worse. If you feel a presence near you, you cannot simply get up and walk away. If you feel pressure, you cannot always move it off. If you see something, you may not be able to run. You are stuck there, aware and vulnerable. That first time, I could usually stop it by turning before it reached my head, but because of my back brace, even that was difficult. I had to sleep on my back, which seemed to make it easier for the episodes to happen. Lying flat like that made me feel exposed, almost like I was placed there for something to come over me. Every time the pressure started at my feet, I knew I was in danger of it happening again. It made falling asleep stressful. Instead of drifting off peacefully, I would be waiting, wondering if I would feel that heavy weight start climbing again. Then, after the night I let it reach my head, I knew what could happen if I did not stop it. That made it scarier in some ways. Curiosity was gone. I had my answer, and I did not want it again. I did not want to feel myself pushed out. I did not want to look down at my own body from the ceiling. I did not want to feel that panic of being separated from myself. Whatever it was, I wanted it to stop. Eventually, it did stop, but not right away. It stopped a few weeks later, after I met Jesus and began saying his name during the attacks. That was the turning point for me. Before that, I had been trying to fight the experiences physically. I would turn, move, resist, or panic. But when the attacks felt demonic, I started calling on Jesus. I would say his name during those moments, and that changed everything. The fear did not have the same control. The attacks started losing their power over me. I finally began to feel like I was not facing them alone. For me, saying the name of Jesus was not just a comforting thought. It felt like protection. It felt like authority over whatever was trying to torment me. During the demonic sleep paralysis episodes, when I could not rely on my own strength or movement, his name was what I could hold on to. I would say it, or try to say it, and it gave me a way out. It gave me something stronger than the fear. Over time, the episodes stopped happening the way they had before, and I was finally able to sleep again. That is hard to explain to someone who has never gone through it. Sleep is something people take for granted until it becomes frightening. When you dread falling asleep because you think something might come for you, rest starts to feel unsafe. The bed becomes a place of tension. Night becomes something you have to survive. So when I finally started sleeping again, it felt like getting a part of my life back. It was not just about rest. It was about peace. It was about being able to close my eyes without feeling like something was waiting for me on the edge of sleep. Looking back now, I can see both sides of the experience. I can see the sleep paralysis side, the way the body can become trapped between states, the way exhaustion, sleeping on your back, and stress can all make it worse. I can also see the spiritual side, because that is how it felt to me, especially once the later demonic experiences began. I do not think those two explanations always feel separate when you are the one experiencing them. Something can have a physical doorway and still feel spiritual. Something can happen during sleep and still feel like more than sleep. The pressure climbing from my feet to my head was the beginning. I remember how it moved. I remember how I resisted it night after night. I remember how I finally let it happen because I wanted to know what would come next. I remember the instant it reached my head, and the feeling of being pushed out of my body. I remember being above the bed, near the ceiling, looking down at myself. I remember the terror that hit me and the way I shot back into my body, sitting up suddenly with my arms flying out. That memory has never left me. It taught me that there are parts of sleep, consciousness, and the spiritual world that we do not fully understand. People can label it, and maybe some labels are useful. Sleep paralysis, astral projection, demonic attack, out-of-body experience. All of those words touch part of it, but none of them fully capture how it felt. It felt like my body was being overtaken by a pressure I could not explain. It felt like I was pulled or pushed out of myself. It felt like fear, helplessness, and discovery all at once. And later, when the attacks felt darker, it felt like something was trying to torment me until I learned to call on Jesus. I do not say that lightly. I know some people may hear that and think it was only my mind finding comfort in faith. Maybe that is how they would understand it. But for me, it was more than comfort. His name made the difference. The experiences stopped controlling my nights. The fear began to break. The attacks stopped after a few weeks, and I was finally able to sleep again. That was the real ending for me. Not the moment above the bed, not the panic, not the later demonic sleep paralysis, but the peace that came after. The ability to sleep again was everything. After spending nights afraid of what might happen when I closed my eyes, being able to rest felt like freedom. I no longer had to wait for the heavy weight to climb over me. I no longer had to wonder if I would be pushed out again. I no longer felt helpless in the dark. Still, I have never forgotten what happened. I never forgot that first time I let the pressure reach my head. I never forgot the ceiling, the bed below me, and the sight of my own body sleeping. I never forgot the shock of returning to myself and waking up with my arms thrown out. And I never forgot how powerful the name of Jesus felt when the darker attacks came later. Maybe it was sleep paralysis. Maybe it was astral projection. Maybe it was something demonic using that in-between sleep state to get to me. I cannot prove it one way or the other. But I know what happened to me, and I know what stopped it. For weeks, I had been afraid to sleep because something heavy would climb from my feet toward my head. One night, I let it reach the top, and I felt myself pushed out of my body. Later, when the attacks came with demons, I started saying the name of Jesus. And after that, the experiences stopped. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally sleep in peace. The stories may be over, but some nights do not end when the video does. The people you heard tonight were not looking for fear. They were living normal lives until one moment changed the way they saw the world around them. Tell me in the comments which story stayed with you the longest. Subscribe to Nockmeyer Witness for more true accounts from people who saw something they wish they could forget. Good night, and if you wake up suddenly, do not assume it was just a dream.